Okay, I picked back up on a different platform after a quick little break. Gotta get my trusty rusty going. If you have any questions, comment. All right. I don't know if anybody can see this. Oh. Okay. All right. I can't see. Okay, I can't see any likes on this stream. So you'll have to comment if you have any questions or anything. Sorry about that. Let's see where I was. Renican. As dessert was served, a traditional Kranikin filled with fresh raspberries, Gadayan felt some of the earlier warmth returning to their interaction. Brooke's posture relaxed slightly, and she even laughed at one of his admittedly terrible jokes about Scottish weather. Still, as the meal came to an end, he was sure he'd damaged something fragile between them. The easy rapport they'd begun to build had been replaced by polite distance. He watched as Brooke excused herself, heading for her room with a quiet, "Good night." He remained at the table long after she'd gone, replaying the events of the day in his mind. He remained at the table long after she'd gone, replaying the events of the day in his mind and wishing he could take back his harsh words. Brooke's presence had awakened something in him, a spark of life he'd thought long extinguished, and in a moment of fear and anger, he'd nearly snuffed it out. Feeling the need to escape the castle and her presence for a while, he left through the kitchens and entered the garage behind the castle, formerly a carriage house. He took the fob for his Range Rover and slid behind the wheel, soon steering down the winding road into the village. The events of the day played through his mind on repeat. His harsh words to Brooke, the hurt in her eyes, and the awkward dinner. He'd made a right mess of things. The pub came into view. Moments later, he parked and strode inside, the familiar scent of wood polish and ale washing over him. He nodded to a few regulars as he made his way to the bar. "Evening, Laird Mackenzie," said the bartender. "The usual?" Aye, Hamish. Make it a double. As Hamish poured his whiskey, a familiar voice called out from a nearby table. G'dayin, come join me, you miserable bastard. G'dayin turned to see his best friend, Cormac Dunleavy. Dunleavy? Dunleavy? I forgot to look this one up. Dunleavy. Dunleavy. Okay. Dunleavy. G'dayin turned to see his best friend, Cormac Dunleavy, walk. Dunleavy. Dunleavy. G'dayin turned to see his best friend, Cormac Dunleavy, waving him over, a half-empty pint in front of him. With a sigh of relief, he grabbed his drink and made his way to his old friend's table. It seemed like just yesterday they'd been playing in the mud in the village, forming a bond that had proven unbreakable despite Cadayin's years away at the best schools, while Cormac stayed behind to manage his family's business. Cadayan turned to see his best friend, Cormac Dunleavy, waving him over, a half-empty pint in front of him. With a sigh of relief, he grabbed his drink and made his way to his old friend's table. It seemed like just yesterday they'd been playing in the mud in the village, forming a bond that had proven unbreakable despite Cadayan's years away at the best schools, while Cormac stayed behind to manage his family's business. While Cormac stayed behind to manage his family's business. You look like shite, said Cormac by way of greeting as Cadayan sat down. What's got you in such a state? Cadayan took a long swig of his whiskey before answering. I've made a right arse of myself, Cormac. He leaned back in his chair, his golden brown eyes twinkling with amusement. Nothing new there, mate. Nothing new, nothing new. Nothing new there, mate. What you do this time? He raised a hand through. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Nothing new there, mate. What you do this time? He ran a hand through his hair. I suppose you've heard there's a photographer staying at the castle? Brooke Taylor? Aye, the pretty American lass, or so I've heard. What about her? I I lost my temper with her this morning. Said some things I shouldn't have. His eyebrows shot up. That's not like you, Cadayan. What happened? He recounted the events of the morning, finding Brooke in his study, his harsh words, and the awkward dinner that followed. As he spoke, Cormac's expression grew more serious. Christ, Cadayan, said Cormac when he'd finished. You really bollocksed that up, didn't you? He drained the rest of his whiskey. Aye, I did. I don't know what came over me. It's just seeing her there, in that room. The room where you used to work side by side with Fiona, said Cormac softly. Aye, I understand, mate. He nodded, his throat tight. I overreacted. Brooke didn't deserve that. Cormac was quiet for a moment, studying his friend. Then he leaned forward, his voice low. When was the last time a woman got under your skin like this? He opened his mouth to protest before he closed it again. He thought back to the tour of the castle, the way Brooke's eyes had lit up at his stories, and the spark he'd felt when their hands almost touched. Not since. Not since Fiona, he said quietly. His friend nodded and smiled. That's what I thought. You know, it might not be such a bad thing. Gideon frowned. What do you mean? What? What do you mean? What? What do you mean? I mean, it's been 5 years. Maybe it's time you gave someone else a chance, and from what I've heard of Miss Taylor, she seems like a lovely lass. She is, he said before he could stop himself. But it doesn't matter. I've ruined things already. Cormac laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Don't be daft, man. You haven't ruined anything that can't be fixed with a proper apology and a bit of charm. He raised an eyebrow. Charm? Have you met me, Cormac? Aye, I have, and I remember a time when you could charm the stockings off of any lass in the village. You've still got it in you. You just need to remember how to use it. He shook his head, but he couldn't force back a small smile. How do you suggest I do that? Cormac grinned. Simple. Show her you can be a proper gentleman. Apologize sincerely, and then do something nice for her. Something that shows you've been paying attention to what she likes. Kadean thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. She mentioned wanting to photograph the castle at sunrise. I could show her the best spot for that, the North Tower. I already offered, so does that count? It does in my book, said Cormac, rising his pint. She mentioned wanting to photograph the castle at sunrise. I could show her the best spot for that, the North Tower. I already offered, so does that count? I already offered, so does that count? It does in my book, said Cormac, raising his pint in a mock toast. That's a start. And for God's sake, try to relax around her. She's not going to bite. Gideon chuckled. I'm not so sure about that. You should have seen the look she gave me at dinner. Aye, well, you deserved it, said Cormac with a laugh. But trust me, this lass has got you all twisted up inside, and that's a good thing. It means you're feeling something again. He was quiet for a moment, letting his friend's words sink in. He thought of Brooke's warm smile and the way her dark eyes sparkled when she talked about her photography. For the first time in years, he felt a flutter of something in his chest that wasn't grief or guilt. Maybe you're right, he said finally. I'll try to make things right with her. Cormac nodded approvingly. Good man. And Cadean? I don't mess it up this time. Cadean laughed, feeling lighter than he had all day. I'll do my best, mate. I'll do my best, mate. I'll do my best, mate. That was the end of chapter 2. You'll have to stay tuned for more on my next live.